Welcome to the Delish Guestlist Podcast, a deep dive into the lives and work of Hong Kong's crazy food and beverage industry leaders, hosted by The Beat Asia. This episode, we sit down and chat with Todd Darling, founder and CEO of Red Sauce Hospitality, the restaurant group in Hong Kong behind a dozen fun-loving eateries, including the city's most favorable New York-inspired and infused spaces, Frank's Italian-American Social Club, Frank's Records, Feeney's, and the late, great Posto Publico. 15 years later, after founding Red Sauce Hospitality, Todd is the man who has brought New York flavors to Hong Kong. Listen to his story now, only on the Delish Guestlist. Yeah, enjoy. So is it Jersey or New York?
Jersey.
Jersey. Where in Jersey?
Not Jazzy. Jersey.
Jersey.
Yeah.
Where in Jersey?
North Jersey. Wayne.
Wayne.
Yeah. Passaic County.
Where's that?
It's like 30 minutes outside Manhattan.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. But the connection is to Jersey, it's not to New York City specifically.
I was born in New York, but I really grew up in North Jersey. Okay. And so obviously growing up there, we spent a lot of time in the city for various reasons. And I worked in the city. But Jersey was really home. You know, that's really where we grew up. And Jersey culture is different than New York culture.
And then obviously you left in 2008 because of the financial crash.
I left before that. So I came to Hong Kong in 2003 for my interview. And then I moved here within 12 months. It might have been early 2004. I came here during that time. It was right after SARS. IFC wasn't open yet. We were having our meetings for the company that I worked for when I came over, you know, in these kind of bare shell offices.
What was the company?
Pure Group.
Sure, of course.
Yeah. And so they hired me in 2004 to open a restaurant for them called Red Bar, which is now a Shake Shack. So sort of sign of the times. But it was there. It was good. It was there for a long time. Those guys brought me over. You know, it was a fantastic opportunity. I was in my early 20s. I had a little bit of fun when I first came, and it was a great time.
As everyone does.
Yeah, as everyone does. And I was only supposed to stay for 2 years, you know, so it's that kind of typical expat story where, I thought I would do 2 years, then I would go back. I had, kind of Hong Kong on my resume. I'd go back and work for Danny Meyer in New York and, open a restaurant.
Do you think your story, like the journey that specific space in the International Finance Center, IFC, has happened? You know, it's now a Shake Shack, which originated in New York, and now you're here. We're sitting in Finney's Soho, which is ostensibly a slice, a taste, a flavor of New York. Could you imagine that this journey would have taken you to here, to sitting at this podcast and to telling this story of 15 years?
No, definitely not. I mean, I think, we always try to plan and project, 3 years, 5 years out, but, life never turns out the way we think it will.
Yeah.
And so, my plan was to work for a couple of years here, work for Pure Group. I ended up getting involved in their health clubs and running those for a little while, but ultimately it wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to stay in food and beverage. And I knew these guys who were opening up an Australian steakhouse called Wagyu on Wyndham Street.
I've heard of it, yeah.
And they were looking for a manager and, somebody to be a sort of a junior partner. And, I invested a little bit and I went and joined those guys. And those were, they were Aussies and Brits. And, I was kind of the odd man out as the American from Jersey. And again, I did that for a couple of years. And, we had some good success and we opened Wagyu Lounge after that. And, but ultimately I wanted to, I had a kind of different approach to the business and I wanted to pursue it, and I was young and thought I knew everything. And so, the founding partner, Wayne Parfit, who's this, I don't know if you know of him, but he was this kind of legendary figure in the food and beverage business and in Hong Kong. He made a lot of contributions to the industry, and so he bought me out. And so,
interesting.
Yeah, that was around the time of the financial crisis, and so I had this opportunity to kind of had a bit of money in my pocket, go back home, go to Jersey or New York, open a restaurant, as was always the plan. But because of the financial crisis and I had kind of, built a track record up here, I knew the market. And, let's face it, chicken Parmesan is, not that unique in New York and New Jersey. And that's, kind of what I wanted to do. So, staying in Hong Kong just made sense to do that. That's kind of how Posto Publico came about.
Do you think it's somewhat ironic that you're bringing this really classic but simple Italian fare, New York, New Jersey Italian fare, not even Italian, it's a New York cuisine to Hong Kong, and people have, raptured over people love the brands.
Yeah, I mean, well, thanks very much. We appreciate that. And no, I don't think anyone realized, I don't think we realized quite, the significance or the impact that it had. I think before Posto Publico opened in 2009, there was no such thing as New York Italian food or cool, sort of Italian American food, we just kind of hit a sweet spot, kind of doing what we knew, I think, which is always a good thing for restaurants, kind of sticking to what you know and what's authentic. And we were able to represent that. And, we introduced hip hop into the dining room,
of course,
and that was kind of a big thing for us. It was a very personal idea, right? And it was a small restaurant, and we thought, well, okay, let's just do all the things that we know and love and wish we had here. And if people come, great, right? And but I think we were surprised by the success of Posto Publico when we opened it. We also did local organic ingredients. At the time, there was no service charge. So we were kind of at the forefront of a number of different, little mini trends, I guess.
So when you say we, is this family homesick, tri-state New York, New Jerseyans? Or did they really want to bring that sort of sister city cuisine, that style to Hong Kong?
Well, when I say we, at the time, I had a good buddy of mine who was living over here, and so he was involved in the business. But also Josh Chu, who is still one of our partners, and at the moment he's spending his time at Frank's. So we were all kind of involved in the kind of creation and the establishment of that idea. There was another idea that we were considering doing, which was more American continental cuisine. And we were looking for various spaces. We looked at the space where Tasmanian Ballroom is.
Interesting.
But unfortunately, Gilbert outbid us, I guess, on the side.
On Hollywood
we weren't
Road.
Wyndham Street.
Yes.
And we weren't as attractive maybe as, Gilbert Young coming in with Tasmanian Ballroom. But we had this other idea, which was Italian American food. And then when the Posto Publico site came up, Soho was kind of a different place at the time. It was a neighborhood joint. And that kind of, it ticked all the boxes. It was a place that we could deliver kind of welcome home hospitality, and it was small and it was manageable and the investment was reasonable. And yeah.
Do you think this, I guess, quote unquote, understated New York Italian American cuisine is easier to staple down, to pin down than American continental?
I think it has a much broader appeal. There are marketing advantages, but there are market advantages, and there are also cost advantages. The market advantages being Italian American food or New York Italian food has a broader appeal than American food, which people associate with being heavier. It also relies more on proteins. It can be a little bit more expensive to deliver, and I think, the Italian-American angle gives it a little bit more, it's a little bit more precise, a little more specific. It's something that you can visualize. There's pasta, there's pizza, where American cuisine, it's so diverse and so varied that I think the danger is, and actually we later did an American restaurant, the danger is that, you don't really know what you're getting when you go there. People think of Dan Ryan's, for example.
And American cuisine, you can pinpoint it on the coasts. But what is Californian cuisine? What is cuisine that you get? Well, obviously, Texas, the southern states. What about the northeast corner?
Right. It's very regional. Exactly. It's regional, American regional cooking. You would pick a region and then.
So when you created Red Sauce Hospitality, and I think that is a name brand in Hong Kong that people can recognize, and I think people can associate immediately, Red Sauce ties together pizza, pasta, the accoutrements, the appetizers. Was the idea
accoutrements, by the way, is not something we would use in New Jersey, but that's okay.
You never know. There might be a bit of French influence. Yeah. But was the idea to, bring the late, former, great Posto Publico into a family of restaurants as well? And sort of when did that germinate, that idea?
That's a good question. No, I guess no and yes, right? When we set up Posto Publico, we thought there might be more restaurants after that. I think looking at 15 years later, it's still a fraught decision for me personally. There's a lot of tension in terms of, should I have grown the company? Am I happy with it? Do I get to do the things and engage in the activities that I truly love about the restaurant business now that it's more than one restaurant? So it's something that, I often think about. So, yes, we have more than one restaurant, but I don't think we've ever considered ourselves a group of restaurants. I think we've still tried to keep it consistent amongst the brands in terms of what we do and what we approach and the people who are executing it. And it is very much still a family business. My brother, for much of the last 7 or 8 years, was very involved. Josh, who's our partner, his wife is sitting over here working. Their son sometimes works, so we have husbands, wives, boyfriends, girlfriends, children, and so it is still very much a family affair. And, that's the kind of restaurant that I grew up, those are the kinds of restaurants I grew up working in. And so I think, it's the kind of restaurant, family and company that I wanted to build.
So is this the sort of feel that you wanted to emulate? You get Soho of New York, then you also get the eateries and trattorias of New Jersey. You really want to bring that spirit and style to Soho, which is the neighborhood for everyone in Hong Kong.
Yeah, neighborhood restaurants, family-owned, hospitality. I mean, those were the things that, again, I was taught. I grew up working in restaurants. There was no computer systems. Frank's on Wyndham Street is named after, he taught me a lot of the things that we still kind of teach to people here in the restaurant. And I think, the most important thing that he ever said, this was a man that never spent a dime on marketing. He never sponsored a sports team. He never obviously did social media. He'd send out some free appetizers here and there to people. But, his big thing was that, you're always going to make mistakes, but just make sure that every guest leaves happy. And I think, that's more true today than it ever has been, and I think as restaurateurs, the industry has changed so much since I started with this, celebrity component to the business that it's very easy to get lost in the hype and
lost in the sauce, you could say.
Lost in the sauce, focusing on the Instagram, bread, all this bullshit social media. And it's very easy to kind of focus too much energy on those things instead of just focusing on bringing it back to basics and delivering good hospitality.
So if people sit down and they understand, right, I've eaten at Feeney's, I've eaten at Posto Publico before, it left our arms and our hearts, and Frank's as well. Where are the differences?
Well, Feeney's and Frank's, are very different beasts. Frank's is a Italian-American social club. It's really, as it's also, as much as it's for people who love good eating and drinking, passionate about food and drinks, it's also for people who are passionate about music. So we spend a significant amount of time and energy in terms of selecting the DJs who play there, the genres that they're playing. Even within the genres, it's a constant conversation like, was that hip hop too new? Was it after 2005? That's like the running joke. Because truthfully, if it's any hip hop after 2005, like my eyes glaze over. I'm 43 years old. I can't even, I can't listen to it. So I'm always like the first one to be like, what year was that? I just have to know. I'm like, oh, it's Kanye West. I'm like, I don't care. What I'm saying? Or it's Jay-Z. But if it's not before 2005, I'm just not.
Because I don't know, from John Landis, Tiger Rock, or DJ Fu, I think I've heard a bit of Kanye.
I know.
But maybe it was...
Look, I don't always get my way. It could have been before 2005, but maybe not. And I don't always get my way. And, I have to, kind of give them some creative freedom.
Yeah.
But, so anyways, Frank's, there's an all vinyl music policy. So we play records all day long. And there's a real emphasis on, as I said, the experience and music. Whereas Feeney's is a very casual, family-friendly brand. We're known for 18-inch pizzas, so some of the products are different. But it is supposed to be much more sort of democratic and accessible than Frank's is.
Let's pause this quickly to say that if you've enjoyed listening to our voices, we want you to check out thebeat.asia for more exciting content just like this. The Beat Asia is the fastest growing regional publication for local news, happenings, culture, and more. So check us out at thebeat.asia. All right, now back to Todd. And going back to Posto, a landlord traditionally in Hong Kong gives you 2-3 years max, and then we'll move on to the next project to squeeze money out. What does it mean for you guys to be at the birth of Soho, sort of the precipice of, in the 2000s, really growing up as a neighborhood that you can drink, party, and eat in, to lasting for a decade and a half, outlasting a lot of neighbors as well?
Yeah, and I think if it had not been for the construction across the street, we would have made it through this period. The construction was sort of the final nail in the coffin. There was dump trucks parked on the sidewalk. I went to go open up one day, and there was this dump truck that was parked, literally up on the sidewalk about a foot or two from the entrance to the door. And so I realized that during this period of time, we were not going to be able for lunch. And so, there was, it was just too much, I guess, the construction. But, lots of people blame the landlords. I never really was one of those operators. Ultimately, the buck stops with, the decision makers in the company. If you got involved with that landlord at that price for that length of time, and you chose to do that concept and charge that price and execute the way you did, all of that is within your grasp. I'm kind of, from New Jersey. I'm old school like that. I want to have a relationship with my landlord. It's usually a red flag for me if somebody's not willing to sit down with me. I'm giving you several $100,000 a month to do business with you, and you can't have a coffee with me to finalize the deal. You're probably not going to be somebody that I want to work with. And that's why we haven't really moved into too many big commercial developments. I had a bad experience many years ago at the L Place, and that was catastrophic for our company. And that's kind of related to the expansion question. That was too big, too fast, but the landlord was very difficult to work with. And I left a real sour taste in my mouth. And so, I really invest a lot of time in trying to find the right sites and making sure the landlords is a part of that. I think that's one of the reasons why we haven't really grown the way some companies do.
Do you think it just lends itself to being more of an organic process?
Exactly. This location opened in 2014. The location in Wan Chai opened in 2018, and we had run an American restaurant there, successfully for 6 years, since 2012. And then recently Feeney's and Elements opened, and that is going quite well. And I don't know, it's probably not rapidly for Hong Kong, the way groups usually open in Hong Kong. I don't know. I just think I struggle as it is remaining in love with what I do with the business as we expand anyway. So, look, I think restaurants in general kind of reflect the values of their owners and their founders and the people who are working in them. And you can't escape that. You really, you can try to fight that, I guess, but you really can't escape it. And I guess at the end of the day, this is a family business. And if someday it grows and expands more, that might be the case. But we're not sort of measuring our success by, having dozens of restaurants. I think, from a business standpoint, our strategy has always been, let's make as much with one restaurant as other people make with 2 or 3. Let's really invest our time to develop what we have and get better within our 4 walls, be more efficient, deliver a better experience, drive more sales, and opening a restaurant is extremely disruptive. It just is. If to do it right and to really give it the attention and love that it deserves, it's an all-out effort, and you have to take resources from one place and put it into another. And I need to be really involved in that process, and I cannot be really involved in that process 6 times a year. That's impossible. I probably could do it, but I would hate it.
Very truthful. I'm sure other restaurant operators are killing themselves doing this.
Well, maybe they love the thrill of the hunt. They love different aspects. They love something else about it.
Yeah. But you have limited eggs, and you like your eggs, all of them, and you want them.
Look, I want them to last. When we set out to open a restaurant, we don't think about in 3 or 6 years. I think I was disappointed that Post only lasted 13 years. I really felt like it could have been here 20 or 25 years or longer. If it hadn't been obviously for the last couple of years in the construction. So when we go into something, the landlord, is this somebody that we're going to be able to sign new leases with going forward? Do we see the neighborhood developing the way we hope it will? And those are all the things that we ask ourselves. So Soho is 10 years. Wan Chai is 13 years at this point. Frank's fairly new, but it's getting up there already at 5 years, I think.
And to this growth, to the expansion that was previously only 1 in 2009, what does Red Sauce Hospitality mean for Hong Kong?
What is Red Sauce? That changes with, as Hong Kong is changing, I think that changes.
After the 4 years of shit.
after the 4 years of shit. I mean, it's been, it's convulsive and, serious upheaval. And, Hong Kong is in the process of changing quite significantly. So what red sauce meant before might not be what red sauce means going forward. I think we had always carved out a place for ourselves as somebody who was committed to the craft of hospitality in the restaurant business. And I'd like to think that we would remain as sort of a niche company, specialty company, if you will, focusing on certain areas. We will never be, I hate to say never, but I'm pretty sure we'll never be a portfolio company, where we have to have a Vietnamese restaurant, Cambodian restaurant, Sri Lankan restaurant, Indian restaurant. I think we'll remain focused and specialized, and I hope we can continue to be recognized as, leaders in hospitality. And we've done different things over the day. We like to have a bit of a pioneering spirit. I think we were the first to bring this local organic farm to table idea with Posto Publico. So we like to try new things. We like to innovate. I think those are still some of the things that we still look to do, going forward.
And what does 2023 have in store for?
Oh, we just need to settle down. We just need to get our groove back and
absolutely,
find our mojo, I guess is the other way of saying that, and kind of stabilize things. And we're always open for new opportunities, but we feel like we have great opportunities with what we have. We have we're rebuilding our teams, rebuilding our culture, rebuilding our sort of audience for what we do, and I think the motto for this year is back to basics. I think that is the motto. I've heard too much, talk in our stores over the last 6 months about we're not doing enough on Instagram, and I just thought forget it, we're still going to be posting, still going to do stuff like that, but I just want us to focus on making sure that every guest leaves happy, and if we do that, then we'll have a business, and so that's it. Back to basics, keep it simple.
You just want to make enough, New York and New Jersey Italians very dumbfounded when they're strolling through Soho looking for the next thing to do on their afternoon, on their weekend trip, and they're like, oh, wow, that's something interesting.
Posto Publico was home to so many, particularly Americans from New York and New Jersey. It was like the first place that people brought them when they came to Hong Kong on business or they moved to Hong Kong. And I think that was really interesting, and that occurred to me because when we were closing Posto, I had all these messages from around the world. People like, oh, Posto was the first restaurant I went to. And it was interesting. It's like when Posto closed, one of the conversations I had with the landlord, he was like, why is it so tough? And I told him that story. Posto was like the first stop, for people coming from New York. People don't come to Hong Kong anymore. You don't have that kind of replenishment and that sort of new, that new audience of people coming, in waves like it did prior. Now, whether that comes back, probably will come back. But, to what extent, we don't know.
Yeah. Well, thank you. We're going to move on to the BuzzFire question round. And that's 15 questions that you haven't seen before, obviously. And you're just going to have to answer them straight up.
Like, straight up as in yes or no? Or
well, not yes or no, but, off your heart.
Oh, okay.
They're not, they're funny questions. They're not serious questions.
All right. I'll try to be as candid as I can.
You're doing well so far. You need to drop everything tonight and you travel with your partner to one restaurant to have dinner. Where are you going in the world?
That's a good question. I probably would go to Marrakesh, where I got married.
Nice. Tagine?
They do French Moroccan food. The name of the hotel is Riyad Al Fen, which is where I got married, and that's probably what I probably would skip the tagine. I've been to Morocco so many times and eaten it so many times. I'm not sure that would be the first thing I would go to, but yeah, so probably Morocco.
Perfect. What event or person shaped your career the most?
Frank.
And who is Frank?
So Frank was my, I worked for Frank as a waiter on and off in my teenage years, and then when I dropped out of college and I had to kind of living back with mom and dad, and, dad was like, yeah, you can stay here as long as you want, but you have to contribute to society. You can't be a menace anymore. You need to contribute, so you need to get your shit together and find something to do. I thought about going to work for him, but ultimately the one thing I had done consistently was work in the restaurant business, and I loved the sort of colorful cast of characters that I came across both on my team, but also the audience. The customers, and so I thought, can I make something out of myself in that, without a degree? And so I applied to culinary school, got accepted, went to go see Frank. I hadn't seen him in a year or so, and I had this memorable conversation with him. And I sat down with him and I said, hey, I need a part-time job. I want to become a chef like you. And he was like, what are you, a fucking idiot? He was like, you see how I work like a fucking dog every day? He's like, you want to be a chef like me? He's like, please don't make the same mistake I made. He's like, I'm going to teach you the front of house and you're going to run the front of house for me. Okay. And, I'm not going to pay you very well, but it's going to be like getting paid to go to school. And I was like, yeah, well, I want to go to school. And he was like, you don't need to go to school. He's like, you don't need to go to school. He's like, this business is for fucking morons who are willing to work really hard. The only thing you got to do is work harder than the guy next door. That's it. He goes, you don't need to be a genius to make it in this business. And he said to me, but I never managed a restaurant before, and everybody here is twice my age. And then he gave me another piece of wisdom, which we also share in the restaurant today, which is, don't be afraid to make mistakes. Just don't make them twice. So, I had this great conversation with him where he kind of dropped all this wisdom on me. And it's a lot of things, like I said, that I still share with people today. And so he gave me the keys to my first restaurant managing, and he taught me the old school way of managing a restaurant. And those were formative years. I mean, they were great years. And, I got to make tons of mistakes, and I didn't make them twice. So I made some really horrible, huge ones. But it was good. I did it for a couple of years before I came to Hong Kong. I did it for 2 years. And so really, I think that left the longest impression on me.
Beautiful. I'm guessing the next question is going to be pretty self-explanatory, but where's your most favorite city in the world to eat at?
New York.
Of course.
I mean, I love Italy as well, but I think, New York probably takes it.
So these questions also are pretty self-explanatory because I think we've heard this already. But if you had to eat one meal for the rest of your life, what would it be and why? And what goes into making a great pizza and pasta dish?
One dish, if I had to eat it the rest of my life.
Is it pizza or pasta?
I don't know. It's probably something very bland and boring. It's funny, restaurateurs, at least me anyways, it's like I eat the food in the restaurants all the time and I truly love it, but at home I eat Chinese food. So one dish, I don't know. I probably couldn't name one. That's tough. Maybe peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. And then, what's the key to great pasta and pizza? The ingredients. We make all of our mozzarella fresh, homemade. So when you get a margarita pizza, it's fresh mozzarella made that morning. The pasta's all homemade and fresh. Obviously, we spend quite a bit of time, developing the red sauce recipes. And so, it's about freshness, ingredients, the quality of the ingredients. And I think with those things too, it's simple also. How
do you control the water? Because I know New York pizza has that je ne sais pas with the New York water, the public water.
Yeah, well, it's making dough is different in every place, every city, every kitchen. The pizza dough is different here than it is in Wan Chai, than it is in TST, here in the central kitchen, that we have, and that you have to have a culture of pizza making in order to adjust the dough recipes on a daily basis to meet the humidity that's in the air and the temperature in the kitchen. Dough is a finicky, funny thing. It's alive, so you got to adapt.
Beautiful. In a few words, how do you innovate at Red Sauce Hospitality then?
Very creatively.
Very creatively.
Very creatively. No, you got a problem, you got to brainstorm, you got to think about how to solve it, and nice. And everything is always questioned. Why do we do that? There was a reason at one point why we decided to do it. Is it still relevant today? Or why does the industry do it like that? And just because other people do it like that doesn't mean we're going to do it like that. We don't really go and visit. I shouldn't say that we don't eat out. Of course, we eat out at other restaurants. But we don't concern ourselves too much with what other people are doing. And I think that lends itself to being a little bit more creative and innovative because
it comes from within, essentially.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha. So there's friendly competition within the family. How to innovate.
Sure. Yes.
With your own taste buds.
Sure. Yeah.
What concept restaurant would you like to see in Hong Kong next?
I do not want to see any more concept restaurants in Hong Kong. That's my answer for you.
But different cuisines, no? Because every chef and restaurateur and tastemaker, they've all had an incredible answer. You've been brutally
really?
honest, yeah.
I felt like my answer was pretty honest.
It's pretty honest, yeah. So what's the difference between a restaurant that serves French food and a French concept restaurant then? Is it that je ne sais pas?
I don't know. When I go out to eat, first of all, when I go out to eat, I eat mostly in Asian or Chinese or Japanese restaurants. Or I eat in like I go to like the falafel shop down the road where they make like really good falafel.
Falafel Tel Aviv, yeah.
Exactly. And so, I like authenticity. I don't identify with concepts. I want to feel like I'm going to something where, the values of the owners and the people who operate and run it are represented in what they do, so whether it's maybe a Filipino restaurant or a Nepalese restaurant or, Chinese restaurants, obviously, I kind of identify with those things.
I mean, that place was started by 2 Israeli people. So, I mean, it's just...
Do you go there?
Yeah.
Yeah. I go
it's
there too.
Good falafel.
At least once a week I go. I have to get my
Hong
falafel.
Kong doesn't have good Israeli food, sadly enough.
Yeah, I would enjoy that. I love Israeli food. There's some good ones in New York that I've been to.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. If you had to eat one cuisine for the rest of your life, it would be New York.
It would be Italian. Yeah, New York.
Italian. Okay.
Italian American.
So what is so great about New Jersey Italian food then? Simple.
Well, it is simple and, kind of breaks a lot of the boundaries of Italian cooking. It doesn't have to adhere to kind of this, Italian food in Italy is regional, right? And there are a lot of rules and things that you do in certain regions that you don't do in others. And I respect that and appreciate that. And that's all gotten kind of messed up and blended together in New York and New Jersey in Italian American cooking. And I like that. I like the freedom and the flexibility within the genre to kind of, not be so rigid with what we do. And so I think that's one of the reasons why we've been successful. Here at this restaurant, we have buffalo wings. It's not exactly traditional Italian food, but it works really well. And so, it would be Italian American food.
Why does Hong Kong feel home after how many years that you've been here? Why is it still your home?
That's a really good question.
Too lazy to move out?
No, definitely not. I'm a very restless. I'm a very restless person, discontented. And, Hong Kong has been home for 20 years, basically my entire adult life. My oldest son was born here. I have I really love Hong Kong in many, many ways. But I think, like any place where you've lived for a long time or where I grew up in New York and New Jersey, I don't love everything about New York and New Jersey. So, I think you can call a place home when you love it and hate it.
I love to hate Hong Kong and I hate to love it.
Yeah. So why do I stay? Is that what you?
Why is it still home?
Why is it still home? Yeah. I mean, it's still home because I'm an adult and I have practical considerations that I have to think about. I mean, if I was 28 years old now, I don't know. I don't know if Hong Kong would be the place, honestly, where I would come if I was young again. But it might be, in another year or two. And so I'm not ruling that out. I just, the Hong Kong that when I came is different than the Hong Kong today. So I remain here because I have a family business here. My family is here. I find Hong Kong a very, very interesting place to live. And so even though, I don't love everything, I don't love all the changes the last couple of years, but I'm deeply interested and invested in Hong Kong, and I love Hong Kong culture. And I find it a completely fascinating place. So I'm engaged always with what's going on here.
Do you think it's easy to fit into sort of the fabric of Hong Kong as it would be in New York? I lived in New York for a few months, couple of years. You feel a bit lost. I think Hong Kong, you feel at home. I guess it's in our sort of immigratory expat community, having this sort of neighborhood that you can fall into, and many of them across Hong Kong, you fit right into a lot of people that are rushed, crazy, stupid to live here.
It's a good question. I mean, I don't have that same sort of immigrant, perspective going back to New York and New Jersey. So I don't really know what that was like for you. But, I might say that Hong Kong might be even more welcoming because it was such a kind of international crossroads of East meets West and people coming and going all the time. And, particularly of the professional class, people who are coming here for well-paying jobs and, coming through. And, there is this, adult playground kind of feel for a lot of the expats who come here. And so I think, I think sometimes people compare it to like college extended. And I think there was a bit of that for me when I first came. And, I could see how welcoming it could be.
And my final question, what are you cooking up in the coming months that you can share with us on the podcast?
Well, I mean, it's all top secret. I can't let anyone know what we're about to embark on.
Dun.
Yeah. What can I tell you?
You can just say you're cooking up top secret.
We're cooking up top secret sauces, and we're definitely not doing concepts, but
concepts,
Yeah, exactly. Fuck concepts. But we are doing hospitality and music at Frank's. I think, we're doing our thing. We're just keeping it real.
What was it like, Wu-Tang Clan visiting Frank's on the weekend, Clock and Flap?
Yeah, it was surreal to see Wu-Tang, against the backdrop of Hong Kong. And I saw them a few times growing up in New York. It was a very different experience here than it was there. But I guess the thing that was heartening about it was all of the young people who were still so engaged and influenced by the music. Hip hop is a very subversive art form, and I found that to be very inspiring, that we were able to get a little dose of hip hop and particularly Wu-Tang here in Hong Kong, even though there weren't as many members as I would have liked to have seen.
Yeah,
I feel like, Hong Kong, inspired the Wu-Tang Clan. Method Man could have gotten his ass on an airplane and come and paid some respect, but hey,
I think I saw
I'll take what we got.
I saw on John's Instagram he was complaining about that.
Yeah. I was with John, actually.
Which is fair. For more great F&B stories in Hong Kong and beyond, tap follow to keep up with the Beat Asia. This episode is hosted by myself, Ruben Verbes. Big shout out to Todd Darling for coming on the Delish Guestlist to share his story. Our producer and editor for this episode is Natsuki Arita. That's all for this one. See you in the next episode.